But one thing, Mr. Chairman, is extremely clear to this representation. Tayo po ay na-scam sa pamamagitan ng libu-libong acknowledgement receipts na basta-basta lamang dinoktor or gawa-gawa lamang.
Paulit-ulit silang nagsinungaling sa kanilang certifications, Mr. Chair. But they signed it, Mr. Chair. They signed them under oath. This means, Mr. Chair, that Ms. Acosta and Mr. Fajardo did not only violate the joint circular, they also lied under oath dito sa kanilang certification.
Hello mga Kapinas TV! Ito na ang huling pagdinig ng komite sa katiwalian sa paggamit ng confidential funds ng OVP at Department of Education. Ating matutunghayan ang kabuuan sa mga natuklasang mga anomalya at ang mga kasong isasampa nila sa VP at iba pang empleyado.
They did this not just once, not just twice, but thrice for Mr. Fajardo. And for Ms. Acosta, I have to state, she did it 4 times.
Mukhang ang mga supposed evidence or proof of the use of these confidential funds ay bogus or gawa-gawa lamang. Fake no, ang tawag po sa English. These discoveries led us to the conclusion that something was really amiss, Mr. Chair. May mali na ang pagkakamali na ito ay humahantong po, Mr. Chairman, sa katiwalian. Under Joint Circular 2015-001, it states that confidential funds must be utilized during the period of the particular project. This was confirmed by a resource person, Attorney Guimora, who said during the November 20, 2024 hearing before this committee that she agreed that in relation to the submitted acknowledgement receipts for OVP's confidential funds in December 2022, these do not conform with the period that was covered by the confidential funds. Ito po yung kasagutan niya nung tinanong po siya ng ating kasamahan po dito, si Congressman Jill Bungalon. Ang tanong ko po, paano po nangyari yon na meron po silang mga ARs dated prior to the actual releases of the confidential funds at may mga ARs sila dated na after supposedly na na-spent na yung kanilang confidential funds. Bali ho, Mr. Chair, mukhang base po sa sobrang dami ng mga acknowledgement receipts na ito na isinagawa lang noong hinihingan ng ebidensya ng COA sa pinadalang AOM sa Office of the Vice President. Sa aking palagay, Mr. Chair, ay itong panahon lang din na ito nagsimula gumawa ng mga ganitong klaseng acknowledgement receipts ang OVP para isumite. Para po, Mr. Chair, hindi magmukhang ginasta itong confidential expenses kung saan-saan lang po nila nilagay. Mr. Chair, it's very clear, Mr. Chair, kung titingnan po natin ng dates doon sa covered nung request of the confidential funds with that of the acknowledgement receipt na natanggap po natin, mukhang bogus po at fictitious po itong mga confidential funds, Mr. Chair. Wag din ho natin kakalimutan na by its very nature, Mr. Chair, acknowledgement receipts po ito. Ibig sabihin, pipirmahan mo ito tuwing natatanggap mo ang pera. Ibig po ba sabihin ito, Mr. Chair, mahigit 100 tao ang nagkamali na nagsabing December 2023 ang kanilang pinirman habang tinanggap nila ang pera para sa December 2022? Imposible naman po yan mangyari, Mr. Chair, dear colleagues. Let me go to another discovery that we noticed, Another anomaly this committee noticed was the use of a very unique ink in the shade of blue and several acknowledgement receipts mula po sa Office of the Vice President. At first glance, Mr. Chair, we found that these acknowledgement receipts, which supposedly were signed by different persons in different months, clearly have the same unique shade of blue ink. There are many different types of pens, Mr. Chair. Alam po natin yan. May fountain pens, may sign pens, or whatever in the Philippines na available po sa market. But what are the chances, Mr. Chair, that the same ink would be used for 2 or more acknowledgement receipts submitted by the Office of the Vice President. If you ask me, Mr. Chair, the chances are very, very low. Especially, Mr. Chair, kung titingnan nyo po, itong tinta na ito ay hindi mumurahin. Mahal po yan na ballpen. Hindi po yan common na ginagamit na ballpen. Ang mas kapanipaniwala, Mr. Chair, para sa akin ay only one person probably made this acknowledgement receipts, and they are not the ones who received the funds as indicated in the acknowledgement receipts.
In addition to the offenses which have been raised already by our esteemed colleagues, I wish to add perjury. Perjury can be committed orally or in writing. If it is orally, the perfect example or illustration, I believe, are misrepresentations during inquiry in aid of legislation. We often hear this: you will be committing perjury because all resource persons in inquiry in aid of legislation and even in all forms of investigation, we place them under oath. At ang lahat ng pagsisinungaling while under oath, we call it perjury. Again, the best illustration of an oral perjury are those committed by resource persons appearing in this investigation while making several misrepresentations. However, Mr. Chair, when it comes to written perjury, I wish to break down the elements of this offense so we can better illustrate how this is determined. And talking about elements, Mr. Chair, as we can see from the screen, there must be a sworn statement. It must be made under oath. The statement contains deliberate assertion of falsehood, and the false declaration is with regard to material fact. Mr. Chair, in the course of our investigation, the special disbursing officers, sina Ginoong Edward Fajarda at Ginang Gina Acosta, have plainly asserted na wala raw silang alam kung saang mga aktibidad ang pinaglaanan ng confidential funds. Can we please flash the certifications? Ayon sa kanila, basta-basta lang raw nila sinunod ang utos sa kanila ng ating Vice Presidente na ipasa ang confidential funds in the total amount of 612.5 million pesos, lagpas, Mr. Chair, sa kalahating bilyon sa ibang tao na siya raw na mahala at nag-disburse nito. Pagkatapos ay ipinasa lang din ng mga SDO sa COA ang mga accomplishment reports at ang mga acknowledgement receipts na ibinigay sa kanila. Pero hindi nila alam kung totoo ang nakasulat sa accomplishment reports, kung totoo or peke ang mga acknowledgement receipts at kung saan talaga kinamit ang pera. We have witnessed this, Mr. Chair, during the interpellation of SDO Edwin Fajarda of the Department of Education, as well as SDO Gina F. Acosta of the OVP. After they testified na ipinasa nila sa mga security officer ng Vice Presidente ang pera, wala ka nang makuhang impormasyon because they kept on giving an answer, wala silang alam dahil ang kabuuan ng halaga ay ibinigay nila sa mga security officers. Ito pong certifications, Mr. Chair, is the perfect illustration of a written perjury. Halimbawa ng tinatawag natin na written statement made under oath. It is a basic principle that even first-year law students know that a statement made before a notary public, notario publico, is a statement made under the risk of perjury. In other words, Mr. Chair, when we talk about perjury, that includes the documents which were notarized by notary publics, sworn to before notary publics, similar to the certification that we are currently flashing on the screen. Now, let us look closer at what these certifications say. Ano po ba ang nilalaman ng mga certification na ito? Number 1, yung expenses where the confidential funds were supposedly spent on were incurred in connection with the agency's intelligence and or confidential operations and activities. I wish to reiterate, paano po malalaman ng ating mga special disbursing officers whether the first certification is indeed correct if they simply handed the money to the security officers? The second content, yung mga pinaggastosan raw ng confidential funds ay necessary and utilized for legal purposes. Again, Mr. Chair, how will they certify to this fact when they are totally unaware about the activities where the confidential funds were allegedly spent? Third, alam raw nila na hindi napunta ang funds sa mga gastusing ipinagbabawal sa confidential funds, kagaya ng payment of salaries and wages, overtime, allowances, or fringe benefits. Mr. Chair, I wish to raise, there is one common answer coming from our SDOs. Wala silang alam dahil ang pera ay ibinigay sa mga security officers. Fourth certification, any equipment purchased was supposedly relevant to the confidential and or intelligence activities. Mr. Chair, suffice it to say that the SDOs are totally unaware of how the confidential funds were spent, primarily because they were not the one who disbursed the same. E paano po nila patututuhanan ang nilalaman ng mga certifications na ito? Certifications which were sworn to before a notary public. To emphasize, Mr. Chair, and as seen from one of the certifications, which our Secretariat is showing right now, our Vice President and SDO Acosta signed and certified this certification before the notary public, and that is Attorney Abella. They also lied under oath dito sa kanilang certification. They did this not just once, not just twice, but thrice for Mr. Fajarda. And for Ms. Acosta, I have to state, she did it 4 times. Isa pa sa ating nakitaan na maaring ikaso mula sa ating mga nadinig sa ating komite, rito ay ang violation ng plunder sa ilalim ng Republic Act 7080 as amended. Ang basis po natin ay lahat ng mga nakalap na impormasyon patungkol sa paggasta di umano ng OVP at ng Department of Education ng confidential funds sa ilalim ng pamumuno ng ating Vice Presidente. Mapapansin po natin na wala pong naipakita na ebidensya kung saan totoong napunta talaga ito. Pinatutunayan lang ng mga opisinang ito sa pamamagitan ng acknowledgement receipts na atin namang napansin ng napakaraming anomalya. Pareho ang sulat, pareho ang pirma, pareho ang tinta ng ballpen. Ang impossibility na ito ay na-disburse ayon sa dami ng resibo sa iisang araw lamang. At isama na din po natin ang mga nadiskubre nating pangalang Mary Grace Piatos at Kokoy Villamin na napatunayan na wala sa database ng Philippine Statistics Authority. Ang isang konklusyon na aming nakikita sa mga ito ay hindi tunay, pineke lamang ang mga ito upang maipamukha lamang na ginasta ito para sa surveillance activities upang magamit ang pondong ito sa ibang kagamitan o pansariling interes. Ano nga ba ang plunder, Mr. Chair? Sa ilalim po ng Section 2 ng ating Anti-Plunder Act, nakasaad dito, any public officer who by himself or in connivance with members of his family, relatives by affinity or consanguinity, business associates, subordinates, or other persons amasses, accumulates, or acquires ill-gotten wealth through a combination or series of overt or criminal acts in the aggregate amount or total value of at least 50 million pesos. Nakasaad din rito na ang penalty ng paglabag ay reklusyon perpetua na may katumbas na 20 years and 1 day hanggang 40 years. I wish to add, Mr. Chair, na ito pong kasong ito, considering the penalty of reclusion perpetua is non-bailable.
Salamat sa panunood. Huwag kalimutang mag-like, subscribe at mag-share ng video. Hanggang sa muli.